Good morning, ladies. I was going to start the show Good Morning Tigers, but I actually don't know our league makeup anymore. But it is, of course, Beat McKinley week. And I assume that everybody out there is rooting for the Massillon Tigers this week, even though I don't live in Massillon or even know what's going on with the team anymore. Fuck the Bulldogs. Go Tigers. Dan, how you doing this morning?
I'm doing great, and I can tell you that I know that everybody in our league will definitely be rooting for the Tigers, especially the McKinley grad,
Oh,
Phil, who I have a nice picture of him wearing a tiger head. That's how much he loves Massillon, even though he went to that terrible school.
Phil, I very much appreciate your support of the Massillon Tigers and our dominance of this rivalry for so many years. A whole bunch of people have been posting recently. I see Massillon is still the number, I think, 3 school in the all-time wins of the country, and McKinley is about to fall out of the top 10 because of the shitty season they're having again. So, go number 11 and go Tigers. That's all I can say today. So, couple of things going on, guys. I have an ear infection, which is causing my voice to be all fucked up. And the morning sun is perfectly coming over my left shoulder. So I actually can't see Dan's face right now. He is just a blob. So already this is the best looking show we've had all season long because I have no idea what's going on. The trades. So I'm going to try to read through my sheet here because my goodness, were there a lot of trades. And I even did a little breakdown. I actually don't have a ton of week 6 takeaways. We may spend a lot of time on these trades. So I'm just going to run through them in the order I have them in here, Dan. And then I have them broken down how every team came out of these trades, and we're just going to talk. So Xavier and Kenny. Xavier brings in DK Metcalf. Kenny brings up the now worthless Jeff Wilson and a 2. Then Kenny moves that 2 to get CEH from Taylor. Stevie and JR. Stevie picks up DeAndre Hopkins. JR picks up Curtis Samuel, a 2 and a 4. Stevie got an 8 in that trade as well. Then JR cuts Curtis Samuel, which is going to matter later. Taylor brings in Mike Boone, a 1, a 2, 2 threes, and a 4 to send Lamar Jackson to Brian and his 11 through 15. Xavier and Darren knock out a trade. Xavier brings in Russ as a 1-week rental for an 8th round pick. Darren then sends Zeke, Gabe Davis, a 14 and a 15 to Greg for a 1 and a 4. JR ships J.K. Dobbins, Dawson Knox, and an 11 for a 2. Kenny ships Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who he had just picked up, Chase Claypool, who he had gotten from JR. I don't quite know where that happened because it was a waivers thing. No, I'm sorry. I made a mistake on this. He shipped Claypool, who he had picked up. So anyway, Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Claypool, and Devonta Smith go to JR. A 1, a 5, and a 6 for Tyreek Hill and Jerry Jeudy. Stevie sends Brandon Cooks to Taylor for Devin Duvernay and a 4, and then immediately cuts Devin Duvernay. And then Horvath sends a 3 to Taylor for Cam Akers. Dan, I don't know if you picked up on this. 10 teams were involved in trades this week. The only people who were not involved in trades are the 4 managers who have been in this league the longest. Me, you, Motts, and Terry were not involved in a trade this week. Every other team was involved in a trade this week, which is incredible. So here are the end results of all of that madness I just said. Xavier walks away with Russ and DK and gave up Jeff Wilson and like an 8. Kenny walks away with Tyreek Hill, Jerry Jeudy, Jeff Wilson, gave up DK, CEH, Devonta Smith, and a load of picks with no picks coming back. Taylor walks away with Brandon Cooks and Curtis Samuel because he was cut, a 1, 2 2s, and 2 3s by giving up CEH, Lamar, Devin Duvernay. Stevie walks away with Hopkins, giving up Cooks and a 2. JR walks away with CEH, Chase Claypool, Devonta Smith, a 1, 2 2s, 4, 5, 6 by giving up Hopkins, Dobbins, Knox, Hill, and Jeudy. Brian walks away with Lamar, paying a ton of picks. Phil walks away with Dobbins and Knox, paying a 2. Horvath walks away with Akers, paying a 3. Greg gets Zeke and Gabe Davis, paying a 1 and a 4. And finally, Darren gets Devin Duvernay off of waivers because all of his trades were for picks. So he gets Devin Duvernay, a 1 and a 4, giving up Russ, Zeke, and Gabe Davis. Take it wherever you want to go with this, Dan. I have my opinions on the week in general and each of these trades, but where do you want to start with this absolute madness?
I say we start with Kenny. I like the pickup of getting Hill and Jeudy. That's nice. I just don't understand where he's going with not getting any draft picks back. He's really setting himself. I understand going in for a championship. We've seen Brian do that and be successful, but he's really setting himself up for failure next year because you got to have something to draft.
Yeah, the switch to Sleeper, because Yahoo used to make it where we had to have even picks, and Sleeper doesn't, and I wasn't going to beat anybody up about it, but this is strange to me. And I'm going to be perfectly honest. If you look at the player for player, Hill, Judy, and Jeff Wilson versus DK, CEH, and Devonta Smith, I don't think he won at all with the picks that he gave up. I don't even have the full list of the picks. I just put a lot of picks with none coming back. Obviously, Tyreek Hill has super weeks where he can pop, but he could also bust. Same as DK, maybe a bigger ceiling than DK. And then Smith is better than Judy, and CEH is better than Jeff Wilson. Now, obviously, when he made the Jeff Wilson trade, he didn't know that Christian McCaffrey was going to come in and put Jeff Wilson out of a job. I hate every bit of this for Kenny. I don't know. He made his starting lineup better, and he solidified his playoff spot, and I guess that's what matters. But overall, I don't like it.
Yeah, no, I completely get that take. I think Hill, while he can be boom or bust, I think he has more consistency than anybody else that's been in those trades. So I don't really mind going that route. I think having Hill and Jamar makes it so that he's gonna be hard to be beaten any week.
And that's really gonna come up. Yeah,
you know what I mean. So I see that end of it. I don't mind it. Again, I'm just curious. I'd love to hear from Kenny if he would like to share with us what is his plan here with draft picks.
Yeah, I guess maybe shop all these players again at the end of the season. It's
weird. I get, in off season you can make trades, but the last few off seasons we've gotten fewer and fewer trades for draft picks.
Ever since we switched to the platform that made trades easier, you guys have done less trades in the off season.
Well, a lot of times I just made trades in the off season just to make you work. It wasn't really that I wanted to trade. It was just to annoy you.
I got to say that I absolutely hate that. The other person, so I have him as a loss. I have Xavier as a slight win. You're bringing in DK Metcalf, and you didn't pay a whole lot for any of the trades that ended up going down. Nice win for Xavier. Nice win for JR. I feel like the 1, 2, 2, 4, 5, 6. He didn't give up any players outside of Tyreek Hill that aren't completely replaceable. And then Devonta Smith is a keeper as much as Tyreek Hill is a keeper. I mean, you could call Tyreek Hill better, but Devonta Smith is certainly younger. And then to bring in all those draft picks, big win week for JR, in my opinion.
I think it's funny that JR is the one that traded away Devonta Smith this season, now gets him back, who we know that he loves him. So
yeah, so I like that. And then I have Greg is a mild loss. I don't quite know what Greg's doing. Obviously, he's still in playoff contention. I think he's 3-3 now. Zeke and Gabe for a 1 and a 4. 1 feels like an overpay. Obviously, a 4 feels like an underpay for either one of those two players. So he breaks somewhere in the middle. Greg could potentially be in a spot to be playing for the first pick of the draft, and now he doesn't have his own 1. So I don't know how I feel about that.
So sitting at 3-3, first year in the league, he wants to be successful this year. He made a play.
Like I said, I don't hate it. I have it as barely a loss. I put it as a slight loss.
So I don't mind it. I like being aggressive. I like an aggressive owner that comes in trying to do something. So I mean, I just think he maybe could have got more for the 1 and a 4 because Zeke has been questionable.
I think it's going to work out really well for him this week, and getting to that 4th win could be absolutely huge for him. And then finally, I have Darren as a win. Darren knows what he's doing. He's been in the league for a while. He able to give up on guys that he's probably not keeping next year, brings in a 1 and a 4, and then has Devin Duvernay fall in his lap, which I think is a good help piece for him playing, because I believe hopefully he still has his own first pick, so that he'll have a chance playing for the first pick of the draft the way his team's looking right now. So
I will tell you if he has his first pick. It's right here. He actually does not have his first round pick.
Oof. See, that's rough. And that's something I feel like there's going to be a lot of lessons learned this year with draft picks in general, because the trades have just been bonkers. I don't think I've ever seen a week like this. I'm going to be honest. When I just look at the week as a whole, I hated every bit of it. Like I don't get some of the trades that were made. And then the fact that I didn't catch it until the week was basically already over. That me, you, and Rob and Terry weren't involved in a trade. Maybe I'll try to set up a 4-team trade just so that every team in the league makes a trade this week. My week 6 takeaways, I honestly struggled with this. Everything kind of went the way I expected it to go last week. So all I've kind of put in here is that, Taylor has more issues than anybody really thought. I feel like he maybe fixed some of those issues with his trade, but then made a bigger issue at quarterback. But in the general scheme of fantasy football, quarterback is the easiest hole to fix. However, in our league, we know it takes an elite quarterback to win a championship. So last week he was missing Swift and Adams. Adams is going to be fine, but you never know when Swift could miss time. He does have some running back depth. He is missing Cooper Kupp this week, but he gets his full arsenal next week, and it happens to be against Stevie. So I'm not going to get down on Taylor's team, and he's still very high in my playoff rankings, but that's really my only week 6 takeaway is some of the best teams in this league are having 60-point weeks, and that's just very strange to me.
Yeah, definitely. I've been high on Taylor's team since the beginning of the season, but after the last few weeks just consistently underperforming, I had to drop him out of my top 2 this week.
See,
Spoiler alert.
We're getting into it now, because unless do you have any other takeaways from week 6? Because that's all I say. I just couldn't find anything. So let's get into the playoff teams. And this was hard for me. Number 1 easily for me was Stevie. Great lineup. His bench is getting rough while he's running this 3 defense strategy, but I know why he's doing it, and we're going to talk about that in the weekly preview. So his bench is getting a little rough. I still have him at number 1, but Dan, I struggled at number 2 the entire time. So I'm going to let you run through your 6 teams first. But do you still have? Well, you never had Stevie at 1. So who is your number 1?
Stevie's team is consistently performed. So I am jumping on the bandwagon.
Oh my God, you don't hate Stevie's team anymore.
Yeah, I do not hate Stevie's team anymore. Terry at 2 for me, just because I understand he didn't win last week, but overall, if I'm looking at his roster, I think he's number 2. I'm bumping you up to number 3. Taylor has fallen down to number 4 for me.
Okay.
Jumping on the bandwagon as well, putting Phil into the playoffs, I guess. Him at number 5. And then number 6 is still Kenny, to see how this Jamar and Hill thing plays out.
Our playoff teams are identical. However, you like 2 teams far more than I like them. And so I have Stevie at 1. I kept Taylor at 2. Basically, he's great everywhere but quarterback. Taylor's team, if you look at his roster, it's really solid roster, top to bottom. He actually has wide receiver depth. He actually has running back depth, which almost no other team in the playoffs can even say at this point. The quarterback thing is obviously a concern, but I still have him at 2.
All right. Quick question before we move on. You said you're keeping Taylor. I don't think you had Taylor at 2 last week. I think you're moving him up then, because I think that
I had Terry at 2. And so let's get into it. I have Phil and Kenny at 3 and 4. I have me and Terry at 5 and 6. And I think me and Terry's issues at wide receiver and depth at wide receiver make us the last 2 vulnerable teams. I think you, Xavier, and Motts still, and I've knocked Motts out of the playoffs. I put Kenny into the playoffs. I think you, Xavier, and Motts still have excellent rosters, but I used to joke that it was 6 of us fighting for 3 spots. I now think it is 5 of us fighting for 2 spots. I think Kenny solidified his spot here with the trades he's managed to pull off. So I think Stevie, Taylor, Phil, and Kenny are in. Phil, you just can't argue with the 5 wins at this point. Stevie, Taylor, Phil, and Kenny are in. I feel like me and Terry's issues at wide receiver are the problem, and Terry's better at running back than me. So I actually have Terry at 5, myself at 6. Phil, Dobbins, picking up Dobbins and then immediately losing him for 4 to 6 weeks is going to hurt. And then Kenny, there's issues. Obviously, QB, running back, and wide receiver are solid. His flex, his depth are not. And I can't remember who his tight end is, but I know I don't like who his tight end is. And I think the same issue presides for Phil at this point, where Phil is starting, Hayden Hurst. Actually, I like Hayden Hurst. So Phil's fine at tight end. And I think wasn't he the one who picked up Dawson Knox and all these trades? So,
yeah.
So he has some streaming options. And then let me bring Kenny's team up here. Kenny is running out Mike Gesicki. Mike Gesicki is either 1 point or 20 points, and it's a lot more 1-point performances than 20-point performances. So there are just issues with Kenny's team, but you hit the nail on the head, and it's something I was going to bring up for our week 7 stuff. Those wide receivers are going to make him hard to beat. I think right now, me and Terry's major questions at wide receiver, and the fact that we can't go to the bench and find wide receivers. The whole league knows I'm cutting my 2 bench wide receivers this week because I can't depend on going against Steve's team without a defense or a kicker. I'm going to have no extra wide receivers coming into this week. So it's going to be a weird situation. I have to get through bye weeks. My week 8 bye week, I lose my quarterback and my tight end. So that's what's going to make this an interesting 2-week period for me. Thankfully, I have some easier matchups, but it gets really ugly after that. So let's get into week 7. So starting with week 6, Dan, I went 5 and 2 last week. You went 4 and 3. I know you don't have your season record handy. I'm 28 and 14 on the season. So again, I have ordered these by order of importance, and right away I'm putting myself first here as the least important matchup. Me with 4 wins taking on Horvath with 0 wins. Obviously, if I lose to Horvath, it's going to hurt me a whole lot. But once I add a defense and a kicker, I'm not too worried. If Keenan Allen plays, I should be fine. However, I do think Horvath is starting a better defensive situation in this matchup. And it's also not great matchups for Mahomes and Kelsey. So I think I should win by a lot. I am going to be signing a kicker and a defense. I'm not going to play the same games I played with Brian last week. So.
Oh, roll the dice. Come on, Ryan. Do it. You won't do it. You won't do it.
I know. I literally just said I won't do it. So I don't have the ball. So I'm picking myself still, but I'm not going to tell you that I'm not worried, especially CeeDee Lamb could go bananas this week with going against Detroit and having Dak Prescott back.
Yeah. Detroit's defense gives up a lot. So that's going to be an interesting matchup for you to watch. And you need Jonathan Taylor to be Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah. I don't know how I felt about the news that he could have played last week and chose not to play. I'm hoping that the whole team is on board with that. And everybody was like, yeah, JT, just get yourself right so you can go get 200 yards against Tennessee. Because I'm mildly worried that if he chose not to play and his coach takes offense to that, do they work Deion Jackson, who was the number one running back in all of fantasy, back into the lineup? I'm a little nervous. So.
Yeah, it could be interesting. I mean, does he get 200 yards this game or does he get 200 yards total over the next 4 weeks?
Yeah.
I just don't know.
I mean, when you look at how Jonathan Taylor has played this season. So I imagine.
I really think you should just trade him at this point.
No. Plain and simply, no. I imagine you're picking me. Yeah, I don't think you've said it, but okay.
Yeah, you're going to win.
Next matchup, again, when you look at the records, no consequences here. It's Brian versus Phil. Brian with 1 win, Phil with 5. In my notes, I just have, it's funny, this game doesn't matter unless Brian wins. And I think Brian winning this matchup would be probably the best thing that could happen to you this week, or second best thing other than your own team winning.
It would be nice to see Brian win. I think it's within the realm of possibility. I think if he had Jefferson this week with Phil's players all on bye, I would actually consider picking Brian. But Phil probably takes this win. Rondale Moore only getting him 2 points on Thursday night really hurts. Is he going to get so drunk tonight after McKinley loses that he doesn't pay attention tomorrow morning and realize that Dobbins isn't playing? Because he still has Dobbins in his lineup.
Yeah, and that would be the second 0 Phil has taken this year. So that's not how
playoff
after
teams McKinley loses, that'll be 3 zeros he takes.
Oof. Basically, I say this game comes all the way down to the Baltimore-Cleveland game. And can Lamar Jackson outscore Nick Chubb, Amari Cooper, Justin Tucker, and the Baltimore defense? I don't think he can, but it's not impossible.
I think he could. I don't know that it'll happen, but I think he could.
That's what I mean to say. I don't think it'll happen. But so I'm going to also pick Phil, but this could be way closer than the records would indicate.
Yeah, I agree. I'll take Phil as well.
Next up, I have JR versus Xavier. And this was just mainly, this is a good matchup. And I think the rest of the season or rest of the week is really good matchup. So I'll let you talk about this one first, Dan.
You know, when you first look at it, to me, it screams that, Xavier should walk away with this pretty easily. But I think JR's team is in a better spot right now. Getting Tua back. Robinson looked good last week. Wilson has a tough matchup. I really like that Wendell Robinson that JR picked up.
It's a good pickup.
And, Christian McCaffrey being with 49ers, he just got traded, on Tuesday or Wednesday? How much are they going to be able to use him? That's a question mark. I'm interested to see how this whole thing plays out. You trade a guy who's a running back who's been injured a lot lately to a team that can't keep running backs healthy.
It's really good.
I think it'd be great. It would be great. Hopefully he stays healthy. I'd love to see him play there and perform well, but we'll see. And I don't trust Russell Wilson at all. So
that was my thing. I know Xavier didn't pay a lot for Russ, but I don't know if that's the bye week quarterback I'm attacking. The projections have this game super close. The projections have it as a 4-point thing. When I went through and did my position by position, I think Xavier runs away with it. I like him everywhere better except quarterback. Now, you've hit one good point. If he loses Christian McCaffrey, it can make it closer. But honestly, I think Deontay Foreman is probably good for 10 points against Tampa Bay this week when they're just going to be running him into Tampa Bay. JR needs week 2 Tua is the big thing. So you've kind of hit the points I wanted to hit. I am going to pick Xavier. When I went position by position, Xavier won this one pretty easily for me. Next up would be Greg versus Darren. Greg, obviously, we just talked about, he's technically still in the playoff hunt. A big win versus Darren could be huge here. Monster start for Darren on Thursday night. And I think that we talked about this a little bit last week. Sometimes those big Thursday nights are a little tough to overcome. And Darren got it from guys you wouldn't necessarily expect it from. Olave got 15 points, which is good. Eno Benjamin coming out with 19 points. So monster start from Darren. However, the matchups I think favor Greg. I think he's going to pull back in. Getting Dak Prescott back is huge. Jacobs, Zeke, Debo, and even Pollard, even though he's running 2 Cowboys running backs out there, I think they all have excellent matchups. I think there's a lesson to be learned from this game. I'm going to let you talk about your take on this game before I pick my winner and talk about a lesson that I think everyone needs to learn from this game.
I'm going to go with Greg just on the Cowboy-Detroit matchup as well. Detroit's defense has been getting shredded.
I think they give up the most points in the NFL right now. So.
Yeah, and it's not been close. So I think it's an easy win for him just because of that matchup. I think Dak should come out and just light him up.
So I think the lesson and it's a pretty common fantasy football lesson, and if you have your sleeper notifications on, they typically tell you not to do this. I'm not trying to sound like a dick, but don't start Thursday players in your flex. I don't think Michael Carter is a good start. I think Eno Benjamin was the start there to begin with, but because he put Eno in the flex, he is now stuck starting Michael Carter when he has Hunter Renfrow and Devin Duvernay on his bench, both of which who I think are better starts than Michael Carter, and he can make 0 adjustment now. So a lesson for everybody there. Thursday players should not be in your flex spot, and I don't think he's the only person to do it this week, and definitely not this season. I've noticed it. Don't do it. And I'm also going to take Greg here. And I think, like we talked about, Greg, what's funny is Greg winning his way out of the first pick of the draft, but hey, that means he's winning his way into a chance to win his money back if he doesn't make the playoffs. So super interesting situation with Greg. You versus Stevie. Great matchup. I'll start off with this one. Kyler and D-Hop did what they were supposed to do. However, Cincinnati and Tampa Bay once again have just absolute cupcake matchups this week. Position by position, I had trouble picking a winner here. You 100% have equal advantages at every single position, but Stevie's hoarding defenses so that you cannot start a good defense this week. Right now, you have no defense. You have a decision to make. I think that little bit of extra strategy, give me Stevie on the win with the chestnut checkers move.
Well, I understand chestnut checkers. I have my defense who I'm going to pick up, already picked out. He did not get them.
Ooh.
So he can go ahead and suck a fat one on that one. Sorry, you cut players for that. I do think Stevie wins. I will say I think that, the Bengals should, on paper, have an easy matchup. The thing about Atlanta is they run the ball so much and so effectively. They shorten the game. Your offense does not get as many possessions, so people that are starting Bengals players, I wouldn't expect them to have these huge games because they're playing Atlanta. Atlanta, everybody's like, oh, they're terrible. They're terrible. They're actually not that bad of a team. They shorten the game, and I don't look at that as an easy matchup. Should the Bengals players put up some points? Yeah, they shouldn't have any duds, but they're not going to get some crazy numbers that you would expect playing a team that everybody at the start of the season thought was terrible.
Yeah, the Falcons have played out of their minds well, and I think you've hit a nail on the head. They're playing good enough defense, not good defense, but good enough defense, and they're shortening the game on offense, which is important when you have an absolutely terrible defense. So. Taylor versus Mott's, big playoff implications in this matchup. Obviously, Taylor has had his issues over the last couple weeks, and this week is not exactly fantastic not having Cooper Kupp. But Mott's has also had his issues and has already credited you in one of our group chats as ending his season. The bye weeks absolutely kill Rob this week, Dan. Alvin Kamara did what he was supposed to do on Thursday, and then Swift, Adams, and Kenyon Drake, wonderful pickup by Taylor on the Kenyon Drake. They all have good matchups this week. Jared Goff could absolutely go off, and that could absolutely help, but he could also throw 3 interceptions against this Dallas defense, and we penalize interceptions. Give me Taylor, and an argument could be made that Taylor should be starting Brandon Cooks over Curtis Samuel with Taylor Heineke starting.
Yeah, I think Taylor wins as well. I pick Taylor every week, and every week his team somehow pulls out, usually the 60 to
I was just going to say, make sure you really sweat it.
This week, he took the 60 to 70 point loss. Like I said earlier, Taylor's team just can't seem to put it together. We'll see if his team can do it this week. Rob talking about being out of it at 3-3 with the points tiebreaker over everyone else makes 0 sense to me. I pointed that out to Mats already. We're talking about Greg working his way into the playoffs at 3-3, having a chance at it. Mats is Eoring it up and saying he's out of it. And
he has Josh Allen. He just doesn't have him this week. It's easy to be down on your team when you don't have the Stallion. So. And then I think the matchup of the week is Terry versus Kenny. Terry with 4 wins, Kenny with 3 wins. Obviously, Kenny with the huge rebuild this week. I'll let you give your take on this one first.
Terry versus Kenny. So, while going back to what I said about the Bengals, I don't expect them to put up big numbers. I think that's going to hurt Kenny. And I really like what Terry's matchups he has this week. Derrick Henry against the Colts, Eckler against Seattle. I think Terry could have a big week, so I'm going to take Terry on that one.
So you're breaking my heart here, not on the picks. So you absolutely killed your Bengals projection last week. And if anybody didn't see what Dan did last week, go check out what Dan did last week. And so, Dan, I've built one DFS lineup, not for our main contest, but I've built one DFS lineup around Joe Burrow. And now I feel like I need to go change that lineup. I'm just not feeling it whatsoever. So Joe Burrow is not going to make me a millionaire this week, you're saying?
No, he's not. So speaking, if you want me to go into more detail on that, like
please do, Dan.
Absolutely. So Atlanta's running attack is based on outside runs. The Bengals have lost their best run stopper and defensive tackle, DJ Reader. They've lost their best linebacker in Logan Wilson. And they've been getting gashed on outside runs by Baltimore and by the Saints last week. The Saints had almost 200 yards rushing outside against the Bengals at halftime last week.
Wow.
So I fully expect this to be a 28-24 game, which is decent scoring, but I just don't expect anybody to blow up and have a great game. I think Atlanta, again, is going to run the ball a lot, shorten the game. How many passes did Mariota pass last week? 14 attempts? That's it?
I think it was 17, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
it was
some crazy low number.
He was player of the week with 113 passing yards or something like that.
And I fully expect Atlanta to do the same thing where they're just going to attack that run defense on the outside of the Bengals that has been suffering with the injuries.
All right. I'll be making that change. You better hope they don't pop off or I'm going to kill you. I'm still going to leave the wide receivers in my lineup because Atlanta gives a ton of points to wide receivers.
They do. I'll pay you $1 million if they.
Perfect. That's exactly what I need to hear. If you win it and I don't, and you win it because you started Joe Burrow, I do need half that money.
I will not be starting Joe Burrow.
Because of your terrible advice. Just like you and Stevie's matchup, position by position, it was hard to pick a winner here. However, Jamar Chase versus Tyreek Hill. Jamar Chase and Tyreek Hill versus Waddle and Ayuk. I think that's going to be the big thing for Kenny there. The Dallas defense makes Jared Goff look like Jared Goff, meaning 3 interceptions, 1 or 2 touchdowns. Terry has a much better chance, and he needs J-Rob to have another bad game to kind of cancel out what these wide receivers can do. Terry can win this matchup, but I think the wide receivers are too much. I'm going to go ahead and take Kenny in this matchup. So, and I did you pick Kenny? I don't know. I didn't.
I picked Terry. I think Terry.
Oh, you did pick Terry. So
yep.
I think that might be one of our only disagreements this week. So, and then Dan, we have decided to add a segment based on some conversations we were having playing Call of Duty, but I didn't clarify with you. So we are going to pick the player we think is going to score the most fantasy points this week. And now, are we excluding quarterbacks, or do we want to go one quarterback and one position player? Because I have both. How do you want to handle it?
I went, when I did my research for the show, I just went one player, but we can go ahead and if you want to do yours first, I will look at my position players. Let's go one of each.
So no. I just mean one quarterback and one flex. Are we counting quarterbacks is what I want to know.
I went into it counting quarterbacks. That's what I'm saying. I went into this just with the thought of anybody. Okay. So if you want to do a quarterback and then a flex.
Let's do a quarterback and a flex. Let's have some fun with it. So my quarterback this week, I think it's going to be Lamar Jackson. I think he has a lot to prove going up against a Cleveland defense that can certainly be run on. And then they don't really have any running backs. I think they're going to lean on Lamar Jackson. I won't be surprised if he has 100 yards on the ground. I won't be surprised if he tosses another 3 touchdowns. So give me Lamar Jackson. My position player, I kind of struggle with this. He's a guy I'm pretty high on this week, and he has a great matchup, and they're certainly leaning on him. My position player is going to be Josh Jacobs, taking on the Houston Texans. They're not giving the ball to any other player there. So this is great news for whoever the hell has Josh Jacobs. I think it's Phil. But whoever has Josh Jacobs, congratulations. I think you may have the highest scoring fantasy player of the week. And Lamar Jackson, I think, is going to make Brian very happy. It all comes down to, can he outscore every other player there? So it's not Phil, though. I don't know who has Josh Jacobs.
Greg has Josh Jacobs.
Greg, there you go.
My 2 players, I'm taking. No, when I first started this, just doing one player. My guy was going to be Justin Herbert. I think Justin Herbert has a great week this week. I think that's why the reason why I picked Terry. I didn't want to give that spoiler out earlier that he was going to be my guy for this. And if I'm looking at position players outside of quarterback, I would take Tyreek Hill. I think Tyreek Hill could have a big game against Pittsburgh's defense with Tua being back. Pittsburgh has a good pass rush, but their corners have been not great. So I think that Tyreek Hill will have a big game. Now I picked up Fitzpatrick, Mika Fitzpatrick. I think
Yeah.
going against his old team, I could see him have a nice game this week.
So what's interesting is, I would have normally leaned there, but my worry was what we saw Pittsburgh play super up to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers last week and really slow those guys down. And I just don't know if we're going to see a similar situation.
Well, I think part of last week was Brady going to a wedding that weekend of the game and maybe going a little hungover or thinking about retirement and thinking about his future next wife, since
I was going to say, or deciding if he needs to get married again or
yes, a lot of things going through Brady's head lately. He had a new retirement coordinator. No, my promotion.
Yeah.
And I also think a factor in this game will be the fact that it's being played in Miami.
Okay.
If it's I don't know if you saw it last week where on the Vikings sideline last week it was 120 some degrees.
Well, they did the same thing to the Bills, and the Bills had Dawson Knox and Gabe Davis who had to leave the game with heat exhaustion in that game.
So I could see Pittsburgh getting worn out, tired. Tua coming back, I think could have a big impact on Tyreek. I think he'll have a big week. You guys fill in comments, add in what you guys think will be the best scores of the week. See if anybody can get it right. Join us.
I was gonna say, if you drop it in the comments or shoot us a text, put it somewhere who you think the two. I'll keep track of everybody's, and we'll see who can pick the highest players every week. So, well, that was fun, Dan. Do you have any parting words for the people?
TIG.
ERS, baby. I don't think we need to say anything else. Fuck McKinley. Fuck the Bulldogs. Go Tigers. Everybody have a good Saturday. Even you, Phil. I hope you're wearing your Tiger costume.